My own mother handed me an eviction notice on Christmas morning. She was smiling when she gave it to me. That smile. I will never forget that smile. Let me take you back to where this really began. Not the legal documents, not the attorneys, not the fraud. Before all of that, there was just a little girl who wanted her mother to look at her the way she looked at her sister. My name is Nora. I am 31 years old, and for most of those 31 years, I was invisible in my own home. I remember my 8th birthday. My mother had baked a cake. A beautiful cake, white frosting, pink roses on the edges. I came downstairs in my best dress, excited, heart pounding the way only a child's heart can pound on their birthday. My mother looked up from the kitchen counter and said, "Oh, Nora, I forgot to tell you Diane has a recital today. We have to leave in 20 minutes. We left in 19. I ate one slice of that cake alone when we came home. I put the rest in the refrigerator and never touched it again. I was not angry. I was 8 years old. I thought this was just how families worked. I grew up watching my mother pour everything she had into Diane. The better school across town. The piano lessons. The new laptop when Diane started college. The tears of pride when Diane bought her first car. I remember standing next to my mother at that car dealership, watching her cry, thinking, I have never seen her cry for me. Not once. Not for anything I have ever done. When I got my professional certification in data compliance, 3 years of study, 2 failed attempts, the third one I passed at midnight and sat alone in my apartment and cried with relief. I called my mother the next morning. She said, "That's nice, Nora." "Is that even a real job?" I said, "Yes, Mom, it's a real job." She said, "Okay, Diane is coming for dinner Sunday. Will you bring those bread rolls I like?" I brought the bread rolls. I always brought the bread rolls. I rented a small apartment 15 minutes from her house. I visited every Sunday without fail. I fixed her internet router twice. I filed her taxes for 3 years in a row, saving her almost $4,000 in deductions she didn't know she qualified for. I brought groceries when I noticed her fridge was low. I never asked for anything in return. I just thought that was what family did. About 8 months before that Christmas morning, something in the air changed. It was subtle. The kind of subtle you only notice if you have spent your whole life paying close attention to people who don't pay attention to you. My mother started asking strange questions. Casual questions, slipped into normal conversation like they meant nothing. "Is your apartment lease month to month, Nora? Does your company help employees who want to relocate? Have you ever thought about a fresh start somewhere new? Another city maybe?" I answered honestly every time. I didn't think twice about it. Then I noticed Diane. Diane started showing up at my mother's house right when I was leaving Sunday dinners. Not before, not during, right as I was putting on my coat. She would walk in, kiss my mother on the cheek, and the two of them would go to the kitchen. And the conversation would stop. Not the way conversations stop when someone walks in and they want to include you. The way conversations stop when someone walks in and they don't. One evening in October, I left Sunday dinner and realized I had forgotten my phone charger. I drove back. The front door was unlocked. I walked in quietly. And from the kitchen, I heard my sister's voice, clear as anything. "She won't make a scene, she never does." I stood in the hallway, 4 seconds, 5, 6. I picked up my charger from the side table. I walked back out. I sat in my car in the dark and I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. She won't make a scene. She never does. They were planning something. I didn't know what yet. But I knew, in the way you know things you wish you didn't, that whatever it was already in motion. That night I made a decision. Not revenge. Not yet. Something quieter than that. I decided to pay attention. I work in data compliance. My entire job is understanding how information moves, what people leave behind without knowing it, what trails exist that nobody thinks to check. I know better than almost anyone that the truth doesn't disappear. It just waits in the right file, in the right folder, for someone patient enough to look. I bought a small digital voice recorder, the kind I use for work meetings. I started keeping it in my coat pocket every Sunday. I told myself I was recording to understand. Not to use against anyone. I was lying to myself, but I wasn't ready to admit that yet. For 6 weeks, nothing significant happened. Sunday dinners felt normal. My mother laughed at her own jokes. Diane didn't come back. I began to wonder if I had imagined everything. Then in early November, my mother asked me to help organize her home office. She needed an old insurance document. I helped her go through the filing cabinet, folder by folder. And in a folder labeled simply House, I found something I was never supposed to see. It was a sale agreement between my mother and Diane. My mother was selling her house, which she owned completely, no mortgage, worth just over $800,000 to Diane, at a price of $480,000, 40% below market value. My hands were completely steady when I read it. I don't know how. At the bottom of the agreement, in a section called Occupancy Transition, there was a clause. It stated that any informal occupant of the guest unit on the property, anyone with no formal lease, would be formally vacated before the sale closed. I read that clause 3 times. I didn't live in the guest unit. I had my own apartment. I had lived there for 6 years. But 6 years ago, when I was briefly between apartments for 3 weeks, my mother had given me a key to the small converted garage unit at the back of her property. I stayed there for 18 days. I returned the key. I moved to my apartment. I never went back. Diane had built an entire legal trap around those 18 days. The plan was this: claim I was an informal occupant of the guest unit, use that claim to create a legal complication on the property title, and then present me with a vacate notice that, buried inside its legal language, was something far more dangerous. A clause that, if I signed it, would waive any future rights I might have to my mother's estate. They were not trying to evict me. They were trying to erase me. It was so quiet, so administrative, so perfectly designed for someone who doesn't read documents carefully. They did not know what I do for a living. I photographed every single page. I put the folder back exactly as I found it, at the exact angle it had been sitting. I helped my mother find her insurance document. I told her dinner was lovely. I drove home. I sat in my car outside my apartment building for 50 minutes and I did not move. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and I went to work. Over the next 4 weeks, I built a file that would have impressed my most demanding clients. I pulled 6 years of my own apartment lease records, every renewal, every payment receipt, every utility bill. I pulled the county property records for my mother's house and documented the complete utility history of the guest unit, which showed 0 activity in my name. Ever. Not one bill. Not one payment. Not one record of my existence there. I recorded 3 more Sunday dinners. In one of them, my mother said clearly, casually, like it was simply the truth, Diane deserves to benefit from this house. She's the one who's built something real. I pressed save. I labeled the file. I did not cry. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. 31 years of Sunday dinners and bread rolls and tax returns and router repairs, and that was the truth she carried inside her all along. Diane deserved it. Diane had built something real, but I had work to do, so I pressed save and I kept going. Christmas morning. I woke up early. I showered, dressed, wrapped a small gift for my mother. I stopped at the bakery and bought her favorite pastries, the almond ones she loves, the ones I have been bringing her for 11 years. I arrived at 10 a.m. She opened the door smiling. She handed me an envelope before I had even taken off my coat. Inside was a formal vacate and release notice, prepared by a licensed real estate attorney. It stated that as an informal occupant of the guest unit, I had 30 days to remove my belongings and sign the attached release form confirming I had no claim to the property or its proceeds. My mother watched my face while I read it. I could feel her watching. She was waiting for me to cry. She was waiting for me to beg. She was waiting for the scene that Diane had promised her I would never make. I read every word, every single word. Then I folded the notice, placed it back in the envelope, set the pastry box on the hallway table. I looked at my mother. I said very quietly, very calmly, "I'll have my response to your attorney by Thursday." And I walked out. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table. And for the first time since October, I let myself feel everything I had been holding. I cried for a long time, not from sadness exactly, from something older than sadness. The specific grief of finally knowing for certain what you had always suspected, that you were never really seen. That the love you thought was just quieter, more reserved, less expressive, was simply not there. Not the way it was for her. I cried until there was nothing left. Then I washed my face, made coffee, sat back down at my table, and opened my file. On Thursday, I sent a formal written response directly to the attorney. No lawyer, I couldn't afford one yet. Just me and 6 years of documentation, and every ounce of professional language I had spent a decade learning. I cited my complete residential history. I attached proof of continuous occupancy at my own apartment for 6 uninterrupted years. I attached the utility records showing 0 activity in my name at the guest unit. I included a summary of state statutes on fraudulent vacate notices, notices issued against individuals with no legal occupancy status, designed specifically to coerce signature of rights waiver documents. 17 attachments total. I hit send at 11:47 p.m. The attorney did not respond for 11 days, 11 days of silence. I went to work. I came home. I cooked dinner. I did not contact my mother. I did not contact Diane. I waited. On the 11th day, his reply arrived. The tone had changed completely. His client, he wrote, had decided not to pursue the vacate process and wished to resolve the matter privately. I stared at that email for a long time. Then I went back to the property records I had been building, and I found something I had not been looking for. Diane had done something that had nothing to do with me. Using the anticipated equity from the below-market purchase, equity from a sale that had not yet closed, a transaction that was not yet complete, she had secured a separate investment property loan. She had represented to the lender that the original transaction was finalized. She had submitted documents showing a closing date that did not exist. That is not creative accounting. That is fraud. I sat with that information for 2 weeks. I did not tell anyone. I did not report it. I thought very carefully about what I actually wanted. I did not want the house. I did not want money. I did not want my mother humiliated. I wanted one thing, a document, signed by both of them, notarized, stating clearly that they had no claim against me, no basis for any future legal action, and no ability to involve me in the property transaction in any capacity whatsoever. I wanted it permanent, unremovable, filed in the public record. I wrote one final letter, not to the attorney. Directly to Diane. I told her I had found the loan documents. I told her I understood exactly what she had done. I told her I had no interest in involving authorities if we could resolve this simply and immediately. I told her exactly what I needed. I gave her 1 week. She called me 2 days later. It was the first time we had spoken since August. Her voice was very careful, very controlled, the voice of someone doing mathematics in their head while they speak. She said, "How did you find the loan records?" I said, "Property documents are public, Diane." Silence. Then, "What do you actually want?" I told her again, exactly what I had written, nothing more, nothing less. She said she needed to speak with Mom. I said, "That's fine, 1 week." On the 6th day, a notarized agreement arrived from their attorney. Every clause I had asked for. No counterdemands, no conditions, no negotiation. I read it 3 times. Then I drove to the county recorder's office and filed it as part of the property's permanent legal history. It will be there forever. Whatever they do with that house, sell it, renovate it, pass it on, my name will be in those records. Not as a victim, not as someone who was erased, as the person who made sure the truth was documented permanently. I drove home, I made coffee, I sat by the window and watched the street below. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. I didn't know Diane had done all of that. I read it twice. I thought about the birthday cake with the pink roses. I thought about the certification I passed alone at midnight. I thought about 11 years of almond pastries and tax returns and bread rolls and Sunday dinners where the conversation went quiet when I put on my coat. I typed back 2 words. I know. I put the phone face down. finished my coffee. Outside the window, the street was quiet, ordinary, a normal day for everyone passing by. For me, it was the first day in 31 years that I didn't need anyone in that house to see me. Because I had made sure the records saw me instead. And records, unlike people, do not forget.